The lockbox didn't open. Natalie Chen stood in the overgrown parking lot of the old Riverside Tram depot, jiggling the realtor's key in the rusted metal box while rain soaked through her second-hand coat. Inside was supposed to be the master key to the property she'd just bought for $127,000. Every cent she had after selling her engagement ring, her car, and liquidating the retirement account David hadn't found during the divorce. The building loomed behind her, 3 stories of crumbling brick and busted windows. The city auction listing had called it a unique investment opportunity. Her brother Marcus had called it the dumbest thing you've ever done, and that's saying something. Maybe he was right. 3 days earlier, Natalie had stared at the eviction notice until the words blurred. 60 days. Her landlord was converting the building to condos, and her $1,450 rent was about to become a $3,200 mortgage she'd never qualify for. She made $31,000 a year doing data entry for a medical supply company. Her credit score was 542, courtesy of David's spending spree before he left. She had $18,000 in savings. Not enough for first month, last month, security deposit, and broker's fee in this city. Not even close. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, browser tabs multiplying like weeds. Apartments. Rooms for rent. Cities with cheaper housing. Each option worse than the last. Studio apartments 90 minutes from work. Basement rooms with shared facilities. Listings that disappeared within hours. Then she saw it. City property auction, commercial real estate. She clicked out of curiosity, not hope. Warehouses starting at $400,000. Empty lots at $200,000. Then, on page 7, Riverside Tram Depot. Minimum bid, $50,000. The photos showed a hulking brick building strangled by ivy. Broken windows. Graffiti on the loading bay doors. The description was sparse. Former streetcar maintenance facility, EST 1904. 47,000 square feet. Sold as is. Zoning, commercial/mixed use. Significant repairs needed. Natalie clicked through to the city planning records. Mixed use. That meant residential conversion was possible. She pulled up the property survey. 3 stories. Multiple bays. The second and third floors had been offices, and she squinted at the old blueprints. Employee housing. Apartments. Her hands started shaking. If she could buy it cheap enough, if she could make even part of it livable, she'd have a place to live. No landlord. No eviction notices. It was insane. It was desperate. It was her only option. The option was Saturday. She spent 3 days researching renovation costs, zoning laws, loan options. She drove past the depot twice, each time more certain she was losing her mind. The building looked ready to collapse. But the structure was brick and steel, solid bones, even if everything else was rotting. Saturday morning, she sat in a folding chair at the city municipal building, surrounded by developers in suits and construction guys with contractor licenses. When Lot 47 came up, bidding started at $50,000. $60,000, someone called. Natalie's heart hammered. She'd gotten a cashier's check for $130,000, everything she had, plus a small personal loan from her ex-coworker Rita that she'd promised to repay within a year. $70,000. $80,000. $100,000. Natalie's voice came out steady. Heads turned. A man in a suit studied her, then shook his head and turned back to his phone. The contractor crossed his arms and stayed silent. $100,000, going once, twice, sold to bidder 127. Natalie walked out owning a 47,000 square foot disaster. Marcus had called that night. Please tell me you're joking. Natalie, you can't renovate a building. You do data entry. You don't even own a drill. I'll figure it out. With what money? That building needs hundreds of thousands in repairs. The roof is probably caved in. There's no way the plumbing works. You just threw away everything you had on A. She'd hung up. She didn't need him to list the ways she'd failed. David had done that for a year before leaving her for someone less broken. Now, standing in the rain, Natalie finally wrenched the lockbox open. The key inside was brass, heavy, labeled Main. She walked to the depot's entrance, a steel door hanging crooked on its hinges, and slid the key home. It turned. Inside was darkness and the smell of rust and pigeon droppings. She flicked on her phone's flashlight. The main hall stretched before her, cathedral-sized, with tracks embedded in the concrete floor. Old streetcars sat like sleeping giants. Their paint oxidized to ghosts of color. Debris covered everything. Pigeon feathers, broken glass, decades of leaves blown through shattered windows. She bought a ruin. Natalie walked along track 3, her footsteps echoing. At the end of the bay, stairs climbed into darkness. She took them slowly, testing each step. The second floor was offices, desks still scattered about, filing cabinets tipped over, papers everywhere. The third floor, she stopped. A door. Solid wood, newer than everything else. It had a different lock, a brass plate that read Superintendent's Residence. Natalie tried the master key. Nothing. She tried every key on the ring. None fit. But above the door, tucked into the framed shadow, was something small and metal. She stood on her toes and felt along the ledge. Her fingers closed around another key. This one turned. The door swung open onto an apartment frozen in 1952. Natalie stood in the doorway, afraid to breathe. The apartment was intact. Not just intact, preserved. Furniture sat arranged as though someone had stepped out for groceries and never returned. A faded floral sofa. A kitchen table with 2 chairs. Curtains drawn across windows that somehow, impossibly, weren't broken. She stepped inside. Her footsteps were loud on hardwood floors that should have rotted decades ago, but felt solid. The air smelled stale, but not moldy. She pulled back the curtains and sunlight poured in, illuminating dust motes that danced like snow. 3 rooms, a main living space with a kitchenette, a bedroom with a brass bed frame, and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Everything was old but functional looking. She turned the kitchen faucet. Nothing. Then a groan, a shudder, and brown water coughed out. She let it run. Slowly, it cleared. The water worked. Natalie sat down hard on the sofa, springs creaking. This changed everything. If this apartment had working plumbing, maybe the whole building's systems weren't destroyed. Maybe, she noticed the cabinet beside the sofa. Inside were books, papers, a leather notebook. She opened it carefully. The handwriting inside was precise, feminine. August 3rd, 1952. Superintendent's lock. James started on the new motor assemblies today. I've reorganized the parts inventory. The system we had was chaos. Nobody questions a woman doing clerical work, so nobody notices when I'm actually running the whole operation. Natalie flipped pages. Entry after entry detailed the depot's operations, written by someone named Dorothy Keene. The entries painted a picture. Dorothy had been hired as a secretary, but actually managed the entire facility, while the official superintendent, her husband James, took credit. She'd handled scheduling, repairs, inventory, even engineering problems. November 12, 1953. James drinks more than he works now. I've been covering for him for months, but today Mr. Crawford from the Transit Authority came by unannounced. I had to pretend I was typing up James's notes while James slept it off in the apartment. I'm so tired of being invisible. The last entry was dated March 1954. James is gone. Ran off with his secretary. The irony would be funny if it didn't leave me unemployed and homeless. The Transit Authority is shutting down the streetcar lines anyway. Buses are the future, they say. I've been let go, effective immediately. 40 years of transportation history, ending. All my work, uncredited. I'm taking what I'm owed. Natalie turned the page. Taped inside was a faded photograph. A woman in her 40s, standing in front of a streetcar, wrench in hand. Her expression was fierce. On the back, written in the same handwriting, Dorothy Keene, 1952. They'll never know what I built. The next pages were different. Lists. Item descriptions. Values. Streetcar parts inventory, brass fittings, copper wire, steel components. Estimated scrap value if sold privately, $8,000. Personal items acquired. Mr. Crawford's lost prototype motor assembly. He blamed a vendor. Various tools marked for disposal. Copper piping scheduled for replacement. Dorothy had been stockpiling. Natalie stood and explored more carefully. The bedroom closet was locked. She found a smaller key in the kitchen drawer and opened it. Inside were boxes. Dozens of them, neatly labeled. She opened one. Brass fixtures, polished and wrapped in cloth. Another. Coils of copper wire, pristine. Another. What looked like motor components. Each piece tagged with technical specifications in Dorothy's handwriting. She'd spent years skimming parts from the depot, hiding them in her apartment. Stealing from the company that made her invisible. Natalie pulled out her phone and Googled antique streetcar parts value. The results made her dizzy. Collectors paid thousands for original fixtures. Museums wanted authentic components. Transportation historians sought specific pieces for restorations. She opened more boxes. Brass handrails. Vintage destination signs. Original electrical components. Control mechanisms. A complete operator's console. Dorothy had systematically collected the most valuable, historically significant pieces and hidden them above track 3. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe now, because what Natalie discovers next will change everything. Her phone rang. Marcus. She declined it. He'd been calling every day to remind her she'd made a mistake. Let him think that. She had work to do. Natalie spent the next week cataloging Dorothy's collection. She photographed everything, researching each piece. She contacted the Historical Transit Museum, a restoration nonprofit in Ohio, and a collector in Portland who specialized in early 1900s streetcar memorabilia. The responses came fast. The destination signs alone are worth $15,000 to the right buyer, the Portland collector wrote. If you have a complete operator's console from a 1920 streetcar, I know museums that would pay 6 figures. The restoration nonprofit was more direct. We've been looking for these exact motor components for 8 years. We're renovating a 1918 streetcar and need period-accurate parts. We can offer $47,000 for the complete motor assembly, plus we'd love to discuss the other pieces you mentioned. Natalie did the math. Conservative estimates put the collection's value at $240,000. If she held out for the right buyers and marketed the rare pieces properly, maybe $400,000. Dorothy Keene had left her a fortune in revenge. That night, sitting in the apartment that still smelled faintly of old perfume, Natalie read the journal again. Dorothy had been erased by men who took credit for her work, cast aside when she was no longer useful, left with nothing. So she'd taken everything. Natalie understood. David had drained their savings, tanked her credit, told the mediator she was financially irresponsible. Marcus dismissed every decision she made. Her landlord hadn't bothered negotiating, just served eviction papers like she was disposable. She pulled out her laptop and started writing emails. To the museum. To collectors. To architectural salvage companies interested in the brass fixtures and original ironwork throughout the building. She wasn't just selling parts. She was funding a future. By midnight, she had commitments totaling $180,000, with more appraisals scheduled. Enough to renovate the apartment properly, fix the roof, maybe even restore one of the old streetcars as a showpiece. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, called by the property. Looks worse than I thought. You need to cut your losses and sell to a developer. I can ask around. Natalie typed back. Not selling. Renovating. Don't call again unless you're ready to apologize. She blocked his number before he could respond. Outside, rain hammered the windows, but inside Dorothy's apartment, Natalie was warm and dry. She lay in the brass bed and stared at the ceiling, already planning. The depot wouldn't be a ruin. It would be something beautiful, something nobody expected, just like her. 6 months later, Natalie stood in the renovated main hall of the Riverside Depot, watching sunlight stream through the new windows. The space had transformed. The concrete floors were sealed and polished. The original brick walls were exposed and cleaned. Track 3 still ran the length of the bay, but now a fully restored 1922 streetcar sat gleaming on the rails, its brass fixtures polished to brilliance. The depot had become an event venue. Ms. Chen, a woman in a catering uniform, approached. We're setting up for the wedding in Bay 2. Do you want the tables in rows or clusters? Clusters, Natalie said. Like we discussed. And make sure the uplighting on the brick walls is warm white, not cool. The woman nodded and hurried off. Natalie checked her watch. The Historical Transit Museum representatives were arriving in an hour for the official donation ceremony. She was giving them the streetcar, fully restored with Dorothy's salvaged parts, in exchange for a permanent plaque crediting Dorothy Keene as the depot's preservation pioneer. The irony would have made Dorothy laugh. The woman who was invisible finally getting her name on a wall. Natalie climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Her apartment, Dorothy's apartment, was now properly renovated. New plumbing, new electrical, refinished floors. But she'd kept the original fixtures, the vintage stove, the clawfoot tub. The apartment was rent-free, and the depot's event rental income covered the building's operating costs, plus a salary that finally let her quit data entry. She'd kept one box of Dorothy's collection, the personal items, photographs, the journal, a bundle of letters Dorothy had written but never sent. Natalie had framed the photo of Dorothy with her wrench and hung it in the apartment's entryway. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Natalie Chen. This is Rebecca Winters from Metro Architecture magazine. We're doing a feature on adaptive reuse projects, and your depot renovation has been getting attention. Would you be interested in an interview? Yes. Absolutely. Wonderful. I'm particularly interested in the story of how you acquired the property. Our readers love underdog narratives. Single woman buys abandoned building, finds historical treasure, transforms it into a thriving business? That's compelling. Natalie smiled. I had help. From someone who came before me. After the call, she walked through the depot one more time. Bay 1 housed her workspace, a small office where she managed bookings and coordinated with vendors. Bay 2 was set up for the wedding, strings of Edison bulbs crisscrossing the space. Bay 3 held the streetcar museum display. The second floor was next. She'd started renting it as creative studio space. Artists, photographers, a small architecture firm. The income was steady, and the energy of having people working in the building made it feel alive again. A knock echoed from the main entrance. Natalie descended the stairs and opened the door to find Marcus standing in the parking lot, hands in his pockets. Hey, he said. Can I come in? She considered making him wait, making him ask twice. But she was tired of being angry. Yeah, come on. He followed her into the main hall and stopped, staring. Natalie, this is incredible. Thank you. I mean it. I was wrong. About everything. You didn't throw your money away. You built something. He turned in a slow circle, taking in the restored space. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. You told me I was making the dumbest decision of my life. I know. I was scared for you. After everything with David, after you lost so much, I didn't want to watch you fail again. I wasn't failing. I was surviving. Marcus nodded. I see that now. Can I ask what changed? How did you afford all this? Natalie told him about Dorothy, about the apartment, the journal, the carefully hoarded parts that had funded the renovation. About a woman who'd been dismissed and erased, but who'd left behind the tools for someone else to succeed. She saved me, Natalie said. From 80 years away, she saw me coming and left exactly what I needed. Marcus shook his head. That's a hell of a story. It's her story. I'm just finishing it. The museum representatives arrived right on time, Dr. Ellen Moss and 2 assistants. They examined the streetcar with reverence, photographing every detail, exclaiming over the authenticity of the restoration. This is museum-quality work, Dr. Moss said. And you're certain you want to donate it? On one condition, Natalie said. The plaque credits Dorothy Keene as the woman who preserved these parts and made this restoration possible. I want her name, her dates, and the truth. She ran this depot while men took credit. Dr. Moss smiled. We can do better than a plaque. We'll create a full exhibit panel. Dorothy Keene deserves to be remembered. That evening, after the museum team left and the wedding guests filled Bay 2 with laughter and music, Natalie sat in Dorothy's apartment and opened the journal to a random page. January 1954. Some days I want to burn this place down. Take everything they've stolen from me, my credit, my work, my future, and reduce it to ash. But that would just prove them right. That women are too emotional, too unstable, too much. So instead, I'll take what I've earned. Quietly, carefully, and maybe someday, someone will find what I built and understand that invisible doesn't mean powerless. Natalie closed the journal and looked around the apartment. She'd found more than parts in Dorothy's boxes. She'd found proof that women have always done the work, always found ways to survive, always left pieces of themselves for the ones who came after. Her laptop chimed. An email from Rita, the co-worker who'd loaned her $15,000, saw the magazine article. So proud of you. Don't worry about the loan. Pay me back when you can. You've already proven what I knew you could do. Natalie had already transferred the full $15,000 plus interest that morning, but she wrote back, loan repaid this AM. Thank you for believing in me. Want to come to the open house next month? I'm turning this place into something special. She walked to the window and looked out over the depot. The streetcar gleamed under carefully positioned lights. The brick walls glowed warm in the evening sun. Couples danced in Bay 2, their shadows long across the polished floor. This building had been abandoned, written off, sold for scraps. Just like she'd been. But Dorothy had taught her the truth. Underestimated women have always been the ones who build empires from ruins. They just do it quietly, carefully, in ways no one notices until the work is done and the empire is standing, and there's nothing left to do but acknowledge what's been there all along. Natalie picked up her phone and unblocked Marcus's number. Then she opened a new note and started writing a list. Phase 2 renovations. The second floor could house more studios. The old supervisor's offices could become co-working spaces. There was room to grow, room to build, room to create something that would outlast her, just like Dorothy's collection had. Outside, the city lights began to flicker on. Inside the Riverside Depot, Natalie Chen, 32, divorced, formerly evicted, owner of a 47,000 square foot impossible dream, smiled and got back to work. Some women inherit money. Some inherit houses. Natalie inherited something better. Proof that the women everyone overlooks are often the ones who've been holding everything together all along. And that was worth more than any fortune.